Good afternoon. It's great to see each of you. Thank you for making this a priority in your day. I will call to order the House Appropriations Human Resources Subcommittee for us to begin the hearings for 2018 amended. One of the first notices that went out, I know, said 2019, but we corrected that, and I just want to make sure that you know that we'll be back to talk again about 2019 and refocus, but I want us to all put all of our energy right now into the amended so that the House can get to work on that. Just a couple of sort of housekeeping notes. There is a sign-up sheet, I believe, right over here. If you wish to speak when we start with public comment after our agencies have spoken, I'd like to ask you to go ahead and sign in. And we'll see how many of us are here and see what we can do about offering the opportunity to express your concerns, but making sure that we get everybody out of here at a somewhat appropriate time. Your words matter, though, much to us. Your hearts and your concerns matter. I also want you to know that in my office, I have a new administrative assistant. And just to make sure that you are on our list for notices, I want to ask each of you that are in our audience today particularly to either check in by email with Leo Chansey, it's right here, or with Desi Riley, or you can send it to me and I can forward it to him. But we want to make sure that anyone that is not getting a notice, that you will be on that list and be aware of any and all of our meetings and be able to communicate with us clearly and well. So with that, we will get started. And our first presenter is the Georgia Department of Veterans Affairs.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman and members of the subcommittee. I'm Assistant Commissioner Dan Holtz of the Georgia Department of Veterans Service. We have a handout. It's in a blue binder, which I don't know if it's been passed out or not, but has our slides and whatnot in it. Commissioner Roby sends his regrets and asked me to make the presentation on his behalf. He's doing his civic duty today down at the Henry County Courthouse as a member of a jury pool, and I talked to him about an hour and a half ago, and apparently he did get selected for a case but has not gone through the voir dire yet, so we don't know how long we're going to be without him. It may be just the rest of today, or it may be 2 or 3 more days. We just don't know. But it's a real honor to be here with you today. Our presentation is based on page 81 of the tracking document. And with me this afternoon is my fellow Assistant Commissioner, George Canavaggio, and our budget specialist, April Dodgen. To conserve time, we didn't plan to go into any detail regarding the across-the-board statewide adjustments in our programs. And however, we have provided those items for information, but we want to focus on the 2 items that are in the recommended budget that are applicable to our agency. On the handout that we passed out, the first 2 fiscal programs, Departmental Administration, DVS, and Georgia Veterans Memorial Cemetery, at slides 2 and 3, contain only statewide across-the-board adjustments. The third fiscal program at slide 4, Georgia War Veterans Nursing Homes, contains 2 proposed amendments. The first, at tracking number 48.3.1, provides for a one-time addition of $578,990 to support the purchase of durable equipment items for the War Veterans Home at Milledgeville. These items to be purchased include items that are listed on slide 5, and they are either replacements or additions for existing items and will provide updated technology and capabilities. The second amendment at tracking number 48.3.2 is a redirection of $28,650 from the operations contract at the Milledgeville home to projects and insurance to support a new survey requirement related to the subacute rehabilitation therapy unit. This requirement was not known at the time the project was developed, the general obligation bonds request, and the grant from the VA were submitted. The last fiscal program at slide 6, Veterans Benefits, contains only statewide across-the-board adjustments. Slide 7 provides a department-wide summary of the recommended amendment changes to our department's FY18 budget. The total adjusted increase for the department is $595,669. Slides 8 through 10 provide information on our mission, vision, and values. Slide 11 provides some general information about our department, and we really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today, and if you have any questions, we'd be happy to address them.
Are there any questions from our members? Senator Howard. Excuse me, Representative Howard. I didn't mean to say that. I'm so sorry. Very important, Representative Howard. We're getting your seat, the number there. Have we got it? Do you know that? Can you see the number right there at all? Have you got it? Try one more back. Go one more. Go 6, 20, 34. It's 34. 34, yeah. If you'll just pull the microphone out, Representative Howard. Try it.
Testing 1, 2, 1,
we
2.
got you. Okay. Did you have a question? I'm sorry. We thought you did. I'm so sorry. All right. Let's hit the restart button here, okay? Sorry. I have a couple just to make sure. So I believe, is there some patient care equipment for the war veterans?
Yes, that's the items that are listed on slide 5.
And what is that equipment?
Well, we've got beds that will be put into the patient rooms, and they're about $2,130 each. We've got 150 of them that we need to get to bring our home up to standard. We still have some manual beds down there that we need to dispose of and get our all of the beds at the home electric beds. And also the ones that we're going to be getting are going to be the type that will go down to 8 to 12 inches above floor, so that if a patient falls out of a bed, tries to get out of a bed and falls, they'll only fall 8 to 12 inches instead of 2 to 3 feet. We've got a bunch of furniture in patient rooms and also the day rooms that just through general wear and tear need to be replaced so that they have a better environment in which to live, and it's more appreciable to what their home life would be. We've got vital sign machines that they're just like the ones that are in doctors' offices and hospitals, and they're used routinely now in nursing homes, and we need to upgrade those over time, and their capabilities have been enhanced considerably over the years, and so we need to bring those into more current technology. Doesn't sound like a big item, and it's not. It's only $12,360 for the linen carts that we need to replace, but we've got to replace basically all of them because over time they have been pushed and shoved and leaned on, and they just need to be replaced. 3 dishwashing machines, 1 in each of the 3 buildings, the Russell, the Vinson, and the Wood. We need to replace those. They're over 10 years old. And one of the things that we need to add is crash carts to, I think we've got 7 of them that are in this program here, to put 1 on each of the nursing units. Right now, we've had to, well, the standard used to be 1 in a building, and now it's increased up to 1 per unit, and so we need to bring ourselves into line with what the current standard is for those carts, so that if we have a situation where somebody has a cardiac arrest or some related situation occur, that we can respond with those carts as quickly as possible and not have to go to another unit. That's basically what's in the list.
Okay. Just to make sure I understand as well, so not because the population has necessarily increased, but just just time to upgrade some things.
Yes,
that
ma'am.
are quite in need.
Yeah.
Okay, so to that, I wanted to ask you, and I know we ask this just about every time, and you may have to get back to us on it, but the average sort of daily census or the current population that is there in the Georgia War Veterans
As
Residence?
of last month, we had at the home in Milledgeville, let me get this right, 238 patients were there. At the home in Augusta, we had 130. That was the census on the last day of the month. Actually, our census is probably running a little bit higher than that, particularly at Augusta. We've been running around 138 to 145 on an average. But the numbers that I just gave you are last day census.
Okay, and is that full? Is there a waiting list?
There's not a waiting list at this time. We've been fighting this battle, Madam Chairman, for a number of years. The type of patients that we're bringing into both of our homes are much sicker than what they used to be when they're admitted. And consequently, what we have been seeing is we'll admit a patient, and a week or so later we'll have a death of a patient who's been there a while, and so it kind of nets out, and so the population has kind of remained stagnant. So we've been able to, at this point, admit continually. If somebody's got an application pending, we can usually get them in without putting them on a waiting list at this point in time.
Okay, I think we have a couple of other questions. Representative Kirby.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Real quick, last year we talked quite a bit, and I know you asked for, and we came up with revenue for salaries to compete with Veterans Affairs of the United States government. Has that calmed down now? Are we able to retain people? I notice there's no ask in this one or the next year's fiscal budget to make any changes there.
There's nothing in the recommended budget, but there was in our request. I don't have the exact number.
Well, the specific question is, are we still losing people to the federal
We are
government
still
constantly?
losing people to the federal government. We are still losing people to community facilities, whether it be a doctor's office or a hospital, because the salaries that we're dealing with for our folks is still low by comparison. We're really seeing this with our...
How low is it?
Right now we're starting, at 26, and that's for a field service officer grade 1. The VA is paying roughly 48, so there's quite a disparity in there.
Thank you.
Representative Benton.
Thank you.
We might have to put you back on 5. Here, put you back.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You said that you had 238 residents at Milledgeville.
Yes, sir.
This appropriation, is that for 200? Is that going to get all the things you need for those?
That will give us, outfit the home, yes, to take care of those patients. Yes,
All
sir.
right. You said that there was approximately 130 to 138 at Augusta.
Yes,
Do
sir.
they already have these beds?
Yes, sir.
So that brings Milledgeville up to the same standard of
Yes,
Augusta.
sir, it does.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the committee? If not, then thank you for your presentation.
Thank you again. Appreciate it.
Okay. Our next presenter is Georgia Vocational Rehabilitation Agency. I believe Director Casey is here.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to allow us to be here today to speak with you. Again, as was mentioned at the beginning, we will be presenting only for fiscal year 2018, nothing else, nothing more. And what I'd like to do is I hope to wrap this up within about 10 minutes. I want to respect your time. I also want to respect the time of my fellow peers who will be presenting after me. And what we will do in this presentation is first we will highlight the organization, GVRA. We'll highlight the 5 programs that we oversee. We'll brag a little bit about my coworkers, about our clients. But really the message I'm here to deliver today to members of the committee, to the members, people sitting here in the audience, the takeaway is return on investment. Your return on your investment with us. Obviously, my name is Sean Casey. I'm the Executive Director for GVRA, and our goal and our mission is very simple. Employment and independence for Georgians with disability. As we say in the office, this is not rocket science. The job is not easy. The job is physically taxing, spiritually, mentally taxing. The mission is not that difficult. But within GVRA, as I said, we do have 5 statutory programs that we oversee. First, Business Enterprise Program, BEP. Second, Georgia Industries for the Blind. Next, Vocational Rehabilitation, VR. Our 2 residential campuses, Roosevelt Warm Springs and also Cave Springs. And then finally, the Disability Adjudication Services. Now, I wanted to include this slide because too many times, I've been now in my position for about 14 months, give or take, people don't realize how big of a boat we have. It's not as big as some of the other leaders in this room, but I have almost 1,400 coworkers. And I also want to take this opportunity to publicly thank them. The work that they do, the work effort, the work ethic, it never goes unnoticed, and it will never go unappreciated. So I just wanted to publicly thank them. But out of these 5 programs, the largest one is vocational rehabilitation, where we have 40 offices spread out throughout the entire state. And the state funds that are invested with us within our VR program allow us to pull down a 4-to-1 federal match. Now, some of these matchable funds also support operations within our 2 residential campuses. Again, the first one is Roosevelt Warm Springs, which is located in Meriwether County. And then second, Cave Springs, which is located in Floyd County. Also, this investment is spread throughout our BEP, our Business Enterprise Program, where they do receive some state funds. It is our commitment to ensure that these funds are invested wisely and to maximize the benefit our clients receive. Now, I'm going to circle back here, return on investment. It's very simple. State fiscal year 2017, the General Assembly invested a little over $21 million into our VR program. We then gave you back, in return, $78 million. And what I mean by that is in fiscal year 17, our organization provided 4,554 individuals with gainful employment. Those 4,554 individuals earned over $78 million. And that is returned to you, first off, to the general funds with income tax, sales tax. These individuals are purchasing products in their local community throughout the state of Georgia, purchasing clothes, renting, buying cars, or renting or buying also houses. It is almost a 4-to-1. I'd rather underpromise. It's 3-to-1, but that simple math tells me it's almost 4-to-1 return on your investment. And the best part is, well, let me back up quickly. This is also an increase from fiscal year 16, where we saw an increase of over 576 individuals gain employment, which is an increase of 12%. And the best part is, when I speak to business leaders, or we speak to business leaders throughout the state, we have to remind them, we are a non-fee placement company. We don't charge you anything. If you have an opening in your business, and you work with our organization, and we are able to place someone in your company, we don't send you a bill. There's no commission made. There's no finder's fee. It's a non-fee placement company. It's how we view ourselves. But again, return on investment. You gave us $21 million. We, in return, our clients gave you back $78 million. Now that's the that's the macro picture. That's the big picture. I want to take it down to the micro level. Now, there's a lot of words up here, and I'm not going to read them. I want to paraphrase. And the first case is in 2017, our Brunswick team had the opportunity to work with a young attorney who was in a car accident. He was already disabled, but he was in a car accident, and his vehicle was totaled. He worked with our local office. He worked with our assistant technology team, our work technology team, and they were able to, with his new vehicle, help modify it so he could quickly get back in his new car, be able to drive it, and get to work. Now, I want to say he was an Emory Law student, undergraduate at Harvard, and he was originally working at the U.S. District Court, Southern District, and now he's a public defender in Gainesville, which reminds me of another man who was a public attorney in Gainesville. But I want to stop right there real quick. We didn't get him a job. He already had the job. He had an accident, a life situation that came about. And working with our local office, we were able to help him maintain that job and get back to work to collect his paycheck, to do his duty. Next, I want to talk about a specific case in Floyd County, where our team worked with a veteran who, through his line of work, had hearing loss. He had been working with a company for 10 years, a very productive worker, but through a corporate shutdown, he was let go. But working with our Rome team, we were able to get him very quickly gainful employment at Lowe's, where, from what I've been told, he has now earned a promotion and is now receiving a higher pay grade. And then finally, in Lawrence County, one of our clients attended a medical assisting school with tuition help from GVRA, from us. She immediately found work at a neurology center in Dublin, where her role has expanded from receptionist to patient-focused role, and now she intends to become a nurse. Again, this is a very unique case because we didn't help her get the job. We didn't help her maintain the job. We were able to help in this particular situation, help fund her education so she could get the job. So we're not only helping an individual get the job, we're helping them maintain the job, or we're helping you with an education to receive a degree or a certificate. Now, one of the other misconceptions that I've encountered traveling throughout the state in the last 14 months is, oh, you guys are great, and you help someone get their first job. And yes, without a doubt, that is true. We all had that first job. It's very important. I actually happened to work at a pizzeria at my local mall. I could flip a pretty good pizza back in the day. But that's not who all our clients are. Some of our clients already have that education, already have a thick work experience, and they just need help getting a job. And we wanted to highlight some of our clients here. The first one, a computer systems analyst who earns over $131,000 a year. Second, an attorney with the Atlanta DA's office down the street, earning over $123,000 a year. And then third, a sales manager at an IT company who earns over $106,000. So yes, our clients will be getting those first jobs or even second jobs, but our clients are also earning $131,000, $123,000, $106,000. And again, that investment that you made with us is coming back to you, to the general funds, through income tax, sales tax, and also being spread and invested in their local communities. Now, I talked about certificates, I talked about degrees, which is a nice segue here to Roosevelt Warm Springs. Many of you have already been to Roosevelt Warm Springs. I invite everyone to attend or to visit Roosevelt Warm Springs. And if you are going to visit Roosevelt Warm Springs, please coincide it with a graduation. We had a graduation this last winter. There's two every year, spring and then winter. And this past December, this is actually the picture from this past December, and it's a little deceiving because there's about 10 to 12 individuals who are not here. And so I thought that was a little disrespectful, and I asked, why aren't they not here? Because they had a job. They couldn't get off work. They couldn't attend graduation. But of this graduating class from December, 58% had a job at graduation. 58%. I know a lot of colleges, I know a lot of universities that are jealous of that number. And when you attend, if and when you attend during a graduation, my greatest reward this past year was talking to the parents. Yes, these students are excited, they're nervous, they're scared, their emotions are dialed up to 11. But when you talk to the parents, I think of one specific conversation I had with the father. He first talked about his son, how he didn't recognize him when he came back for graduation, because when he dropped off his son, he said his son had lacked confidence, wouldn't look you in the eye, didn't really speak. But when he came back for his son's graduation, a completely different man, wouldn't stop talking, had confidence, had a job. And I remember the exact line with a passion in his eyes looking at me going, this is where taxpayer dollars need to go. Institutes like this, facilities like this. But what are they doing at Roosevelt Warm Springs? What are they earning certificate-wise? It's very exciting stuff. I'm talking about certificates in robotics, graphic design, 3D printing. I think of a visit we had, and my communication manager and I saw a banana in the 3D printing room that was starting to kind of get old. We thought, that's gross. Someone should throw that out. And we went to touch it. It was a 3D printing. It wasn't a real banana. Certified nursing assistants, and also high voltage wiring. So these graduates are earning high dollar end certificates so they can get out there and gain independence, get a job and gain independence. But also our second residential campus, which is Cave Springs, which is up north. And I'm proud to say that this past December, a handful of weeks ago, the center had its first official graduation for 13 students. I was unable to attend that one, and I'm very sorry. I look forward to attending future graduations from Cave Springs. Next, I want to talk about BEP program, the Business Enterprise Program, another area where you are making investments with GVRA. And what the BE program provides entrepreneurship opportunities to blind businessmen and women throughout the state. BEP has more than 120 different sites statewide. This is your roadside vending machines throughout the highways in Georgia. These are your snack shops. This is Fort Benning, the NSA, the new NSA facility in Fort Gordon and Augusta. And also with the snack shops, I'm not sure if you've been to the snack shop below on the first floor of this building or across the street at CLOB, please visit it. They worked leadership with BEP, decided they could look better and be better. And if you go down there, you look like you're walking into a coffee shop. They have fresh deli sandwiches, salads, soup. They accept your ATM card as you pay. It is very sharp. It is very sharp. But return on investment with our BEP program. Last fiscal year, BEP received just a hair over $286,000. $286,000. We have 67 vendors, or really business partners, who then went off to earn $8.3 million. Some of these vendors, our business partners, do very well. Again, various cafeterias, snack shop, vending machines. Now we do have next two programs that receive no state funding under the GVR program. First is going to be your DAS, your Disability Adjudication Services, or Social Security, and also GIBE, Georgia Industries for the Blind. With our DAS program, this is entirely federally funded, which as of an hour ago, I believe they are now back at work. With our DAS program, our adjudicators have a 98% accuracy rate. They are number one in the Southeast and the top 2 or 3 in the country. Now, GIBE, Georgia Industries for the Blind, we have 3 manufacturing locations. We have 3 manufacturing plants under our umbrella, located in Bainbridge, Griffin, and Warner Robins. And by federal mandate, 75% of those coworkers are blind. The products that they are producing include pillows, safety vests, classification folders, screen printing, warehousing, and box reclamation services. The great thing I want to brag about with GIB is we have given them the opportunity to run their ship. I don't know how to run a factory, but we have leadership down there who do. And over the last year, they have flipped over every stone trying to find new business opportunities. And they found it right in front of our faces. And that's partnering up with other state agencies here. If it's Georgia State Patrol, GDOT, Governor's Office of Highway Safety, Department of Agriculture with Commissioner Gary Black with their, Georgia Grown. We are producing all that material for them. And so I'm very proud of the work that GIB is doing at their 3 locations. Now, I do want to quickly highlight what else has been going on within our organization the last 14 months, and that is we are listening and thinking outside the box. Last 14 months, we have visited, we fell about 2 or 3 short all of our 40 VR offices. We visited both residential campuses, BEP, and also the GIBE facilities. And we're listening. And during those travels, listening to our coworkers, listening to our clients, their parents, it also came very clear we were not properly serving two segments of our clients. And I'm speaking specifically of the deaf and the blind. And there are really two questions that drive every decision we make as an organization. How does it affect the client, and will the client benefit? If we get positive answers, we move forward. So huddling up with leadership, we agreed with what we were hearing. We will take constructive criticism. And so last year we created, I want to make sure I have this right. Yep. The Department of Blind and Deaf Services, where we appointed a new director. Shortly thereafter, we realized we could do a little bit better. We listened to our clients. And so we created an assistant director of the blind, who is a blind female promoted from within, and also assistant director of the deaf, who is a deaf man who was promoted from within. Also, we're doing something that I think is very cutting edge, but has nothing to do with technology. Nothing. It's not coming out of GTRI, Georgia Tech Research Institute, down the street. And this is our Retiree Advisory Committee. Traveling around the state, very quickly you learn VR is a calling. And when you retire, that calling doesn't leave you. You can have been retired for 5 minutes or 15. And as we traveled around the state, we kept bumping into retirees who wanted back in, who wanted to help. Again, does it benefit the client? How does it affect the client? And so what we have done, we have about 15 retirees spread from all over the state. We started a committee, and to make sure we are organizing it properly and implementing it properly, we've signed a partnership with the Carl Vinson Institute out of UGA, and this year we'll be launching, releasing these retirees throughout their local communities so they can work with their local VR offices to help the counselors and then subsequently help the clients. Yes, there are HIPAA laws involved. That's why our HR and legal team is very closely working with this program, with this project. But I'm just not aware of any other state agency who's able to do something like this. And so I am very excited about that, and I do look forward later on this year giving you all an update on how that's going. Let's get down brass tacks. For state fiscal year 2018, you really don't see too much changes. For the BEP program, recommendation $290,000, administrative $1.4 million. Again, with DAS, Disability Adjudication Services, also Georgia Industries for the Blind, receive 0 state funding. Now we do have the Roosevelt Warm Springs with the $1.6 million. This is a pass-through that travels through GVRA and goes to the hospital, who I will add we have an excellent relationship with David Mork and his team there. And then finally, we have the VR program. You're just a hair under or over $21 million. Total programs, $24.4 million. I think I'm at the end of my presentation here, but again, the takeaway is return on investment. You're earning at least 3, if not 4 to 1 return on your investment. I'm proud of our clients. I'm proud of my coworkers, and I hope we continue to earn your trust and support, and we look forward to earning you an excellent return on that investment. And I believe that's about 10 minutes, and I'll be more than happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Director Casey. I think we do have, particularly now, Representative Howard. I believe you have asked to speak. There's a button there too. There we go. I think we've got you.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I must tell you, I don't have a question, but I have a statement to make. In Augusta, there's your office in Augusta. I was directed to go by there for some assistance that I need as I fall into the category of, disabled. And I have an application running through right now that your staff workers have done an excellent job of taking the application through. and I did not know how important this was to this state, to make sure that we take care of our disabled. And now I become a client or victim or whatever you may want to call it that have experienced this, and want to commend you for the work that you're doing. And the state has flourished in a big way by this department doing what it's doing to take place and help Georgians get back to work, become gainfully employed. Because as I see this process going through, it's going to be a great assistance to me to become more independent. And that's what I need to continue to do this work for the state that I do. So thank you again, and I commend you for your work.
Representative, thank you for those kind words, and as soon as I get back to my office, I will call the Augusta office and share that compliment with them. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from the committee members? Well, Director Casey, I want to thank you so much for the work that you're doing. I joined Representative Howard. It's great to hear that, too, and to hear from someone who is walking through that experience right now, experiencing it firsthand. And so you have a great advocate and friend here to help us stay informed as well as he serves on this committee. I wanted to ask you something. One of the proudest moments, I think, of last year in the part of the budget that we handle was increasing the inclusive post-secondary education scholarships. And money was transferred out of Georgia Council on Developmental Disabilities with matching funds to come to you. And we tried to grow that program large and fast because it is the pathway, I think, for so many young individuals in this state to reach the potential that for a long time was not even acknowledged and recognized. So now as we do that and we realize that there are post-secondary opportunities, there were challenges, though, I'm told this last year, that some of the federal matching fund could not be drawn down. If I'm wrong, I'm going to give you just a second to
Nope, you are not wrong.
clarify that for me, because we could be confused here. But university costs like room and board could not be covered. And I believe, as I understand it, that y'all met some of those needs. You were able to pull some money that you had, and I thank you for doing that. So as we go forward in this important endeavor to make sure that there are post-secondary education opportunities, I wondered if y'all have been working on a new strategy, a different way we could try to do that and try to continue not only to maintain but to grow those programs.
Well, I can tell you with the IPSI program, first and foremost, I personally am very invested in it and believe in that. And I want to backtrack. And actually, our clients, they start off at age 14 through federal mandate, WIOA. So we are working with young women, men and women, as young as 14. And we're helping them plan their future. Where before, I'll be honest and blunt with you, going to college, any sort of post-secondary education was never, I shouldn't say never, rarely part of the conversation, where now it is today, from day one. And first off, we have a excellent relationship with the Department of Education. We brag on them, they brag on us all the time, and that's not because of me, that's because of other leadership within GVRA and Department of Education. Now, with working with the different colleges, you also have to, we also constrained by what the feds will allow us and will not allow us to do. And what I will tell you is we had the feds came down this past summer in August and did a program audit of GVRA. We're still waiting for that audit to be received by us, and we expect that audit to come, I would hope, if not the end of this month, next month, but I will not make any guarantees on that, which will give us more clear vision on what we can and cannot do. And again, the most important thing is the client. How does it affect the client? How does it benefit the client? How does it affect the client? And whichever path that is, it will have our full backing. But when that audit report comes down this month, next month, we'll have a lot more clear vision again on what we can and cannot do.
Well, I thank you for that engagement and for your personal commitment to it as well. I believe I just heard this is so important. I know it's important to many people in this room and throughout our state. So I thank you for your commitment to it. And if you'll keep us informed. And I'm going to give you a little challenge here today. And Leo doesn't even know I'm getting ready to do this, but I think there are other places in our state where we also need to be looking at some partnerships for those individuals. So I'm going to ask you to help this committee be aware of them, to start thinking and dreaming big. I think, right in our own communities, certainly in some places such as our technical schools, they are already, I don't want to make it sound like they're not, but what are some ways and some places we can grow and help those individuals who so want to live full, important lives and become taxpayers and help Georgia be the very best state she can be. So I'll ask you to help us dream a little bit about that.
I'll be more than happy to provide you in the committee a list of activities and partnerships that we have continued to have grown and continue to develop over the last 14 months, and then also some ideas of where we haven't made those connections yet, and maybe you can be an assistant to us too.
Well, thank you so much. I think this is one of those places where when we were shoved into somewhat of a settlement with the federal government, we found out there were some really good things that could come from that. So I thank you for it very much. I don't see any other questions at this time, so thank you for your work.
Again, thank you. Thank you all.
Next, the Georgia Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities. And I think I see Commissioner Fitzgerald and her team out there.
You ready?
Yes, we're ready when you are.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. It's a privilege to be before you again to share with you some budget requests from the Department of Behavioral Health and Developmental Disabilities. I have a very brief presentation as our amended fiscal year 18 requests are minimal. So I'll be happy to share those with you and then answer any questions that you have. Always noting that I have to begin with a note of gratitude, first of all, for your continued interest and support, but also just a reminder that DBHDD's billion-dollar budget is rather complex and has a lot of moving parts and elements to it. And the budget presentation doesn't come together without a lot of cooperation, both from the House Budget Office and others, and then certainly want to acknowledge my team members who are here and help try to make sense of what is a complicated budget. But with that, I'll proceed. For the amended fiscal year budget changes, really there are two major categories, the first of which is statewide budget adjustments, and I anticipate that these look very familiar to you. They are those that are allocated across most departments, and all of these are administrative changes that result from changes in DOAS rates, and you can see the impact on our amended budget there, totaling $467,767, and these are annual fluctuations that we are very familiar with handling, so I won't spend too much time on those, but if you have questions, we can return to those. Each of those are related to DOAS rate changes. I would like to spend a little more time because there certainly has been a great deal of interest in the autism initiative in the state of Georgia, and the rest of our amended fiscal year 18 adjustments are in the autism budget that. Again, there was a lot of excitement coming forward about Governor Deal making the announcement and making the investment for the first time in Georgia that we were going to build an autism benefit. So I want to give a little bit of context and then tell you very specifically what the budget items are for. So as you can see here, we just gave you a brief summary. Many are familiar with some of the realities about autism, since it certainly represents a challenge here in Georgia as it does across the nation. There certainly has been a lot of press and other information about the growing challenge. As you see here in Georgia, the working figure is that 1 out of 64 children aged 0 to 21 in Georgia are diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. And I want to try and be very careful about my language and just do a little bit of education here today. It's now appropriate to use the term ASD to suggest that autism isn't a single thing, but it's actually a spectrum of disorders, and certainly an area where there is growing knowledge and information about effective treatments. So where you see ASD, that's now the current term for talking about autism. You're also probably well aware that there are 1.1 million children in Georgia on Medicaid that are younger than 21 years of age. And so then you see there, it's estimated that 17,000 children with autism are enrolled, in fact, in Georgia Medicaid. I think you all are familiar with the fact that the federal government, through the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, issued guidance to the states about the importance of addressing individuals with ASD and challenge states to develop strategies to address the needs of the population. And so following that guidance from the feds, we set out on a partnership approach. And I do want to take a minute. You've heard a little bit about this, and if you hear from other commissioners, I can't underscore the importance of the Department of Community Health, led by Commissioner Berry, the Department of Public Health, first led by Commissioner Fitzgerald, now by Dr. O'Neill, and DBHDD working cooperatively. Each of those three agencies has different missions, different skills, different strategies, different levers to push within state in order to really make effective treatments available. And this was a collaboration of epic proportions and exists today. We still have a work group that meets on a weekly basis to really talk about not just the stand-up, but the implementation and then continued oversight of, is what we're building working? So you can see we've really tried to narrow down the responsibility that each of the departments have held in this collaboration. So there may be questions that you ask that may be out of my realm of expertise, but I will talk to you a little bit most specifically about DBHDD's role in developing crisis service capacity for individuals with ASD. Tried to do as simple a slide as possible to really narrow into an overall picture of ASD, and then also really understanding very specifically where DBHDD's role is in this work. I can't stress enough about how new this is for all of us to build a new benefit, to make services available, to build the policies, the services, the workforce to do this. So I think if you hear from myself or any of the other commissioners, what you'll hear is so much gratitude and optimism for the opportunity to address an unmet need, but also caution and concern, as it will take time for us to address the needs and to really understand what works with the population. So what we now are building and what is now available that was not available before, there was screening available, but what now the door into that has been adjusted is we now have ASD specific screening that as part of the benefit package. Through that screening is the way for an individual to get a diagnosis. As within all of our work, a diagnosis has to be confirmed. That's what opens the door to the possibility of a comprehensive assessment. Hopefully, this language is pretty simple. As you would expect, any individual that's going to receive a service or treatment plan, that's going to be most effective when you have a comprehensive assessment that looks at that individual and their whole needs within that disorder. And that's what's been missing before. It's very exciting to be able to say we're getting that on the ground. What that allows us to do, again, that's different from before, is you see some very technical distinctions here between behavior therapies, skills building, and then group and family skills and supports. And you see 2 levels of each of those activities. There's a regular level, and then around that, just suggesting for many individuals they have a need for more intense services and supports. And all of those can be designed through an individualized treatment plan once that comprehensive assessment is done. We have not had the capacity and the ability to do this in the state of Georgia until January 1st, really, when the benefit opened. It's been very exciting to know that we're building the infrastructure properly. What you see on the far end of that really speaks to DBHDD's budget request, because the role that we play really is in the development and delivery of crisis services within all of those community-based services that you see there. Many of you are familiar, and there are many families throughout the state of Georgia that are very familiar with what happens when individuals don't get what they need at the right time in the right measure. And really, that's where crisis can occur. And it's very important that we build a system that can not only provide early intervention, adequate treatment, but also can respond to crisis. So that, that final half circle there really represents an array of crisis services that through this amended fiscal year budget request, DBHDD is going to be able to build to sort of serve in and around all of those other services as we build and make them available. So that's to be a big picture. Now let me show you how this translates into our budget request. Okay, very simply for and again, this is the totality of the remainder of our amended budget requests, both related to autism. The first one is a one-time funding request. You see for $1,250,000, and this is for the construction of a 10-bed autism-specific crisis unit. Let me say a word about this and the need for having an autism-specific crisis unit. So usually when DBHDD comes before this committee, we're talking about behavioral health services, or we're talking about intellectual and developmental disability services. And we have an array of treatment pathways in each of those areas. It's very important to note that autism is something different from that. So I think folks maybe had some expectation, can't you just serve folks with autism within the service delivery system that you have? The answer is no, not if we're going to serve them adequately and not if we're going to do it right. And that was the guidance that we got. We're going to try and figure out how to do this right. So rather than just saying, have those individuals go into the same crisis units for children that exist, they are not appropriate for that treatment setting. Let's build another unit and then have that unit staffed and equipped in order to treat youth with ASD in that crisis setting. So this is to begin the building of a unit that will only serve those individuals. So that's the first item there. The second item, and I'm sorry, let me say there's additional funds in 19, I think about almost $6 million to continue with the ongoing needs for the running of that unit once it's up and running. But for the amended budget, it's just for the construction. The second item is capacity building for autism services, and you see that in the amount of $1.1 million roughly there. And this is really to begin the buildup of a specialized workforce. There are individuals in the state who have the appropriate certification to provide services to this population, but we need more. And we need an aggressive effort to really build, educate, train, and then provide supervision and guidance for the ongoing workforce that we believe is going to be needed as this benefit and access to this benefit grows within the state. So this is funds that allow us to do the initial capacity and buildup of the workforce that, again, is specially trained and will be embedded in local community service providers in order to provide support to individuals with autism. So you see the total there of the two items, the administrative changes that I mentioned, the two autism items, and you see the total request there in the amount of $2,879,809, and then our final overall budget. Let me pause there and see if you have questions.
Representative Howard.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for your work you're doing with autism. My question is, autism has just come to the forefront in most recent years, where states, not only Georgia, have begun to focus in on more support systems that will support families and those kids that are coming through 0 to 21. But there are, I don't know the number, but there are quite a few above the age of 21 that came through the system before we begin to focus on the needs. What are we doing about that group that's above the age of 21?
Thank you, sir, for the question, and thank you for your interest. And you raise a really important point, right? If you go for a long time without a benefit, that means many individuals have already passed the age of 21 and may have needs. So they can be served through some of our waiver programs. As I mentioned, our Division of Developmental Disabilities, there are individuals, if they qualify to receive services and supports as a result of that disability, they may have ASD and they may be eligible for certain supports that are offered through our waiver.
I think at that point they are being grouped with adults that are not autism, that don't fall in the autism group, but maybe your Down syndromes or some of the others. So there's nothing specifically to address autism depending on the severity of the case. Reason I know that because I have two autistic adults in my family, in my wife's family, and therefore I've watched them grow. And as they have grown, the services became minimal. There was not many services at all at one point, but now there are minimals that becomes minimal services unless they go through the waiver program. So.
It's always our hope, to the best degree that we can, to individualize those services for each individual through an individualized treatment plan. But I do acknowledge some of the challenge of what you've said. When you have a period of time where you do not have a benefit, we do have challenges. We're really excited about the opportunity to have earlier intervention, which really can change the trajectory for individuals going forward. Thank you.
So let me clarify. Was that the end of your presentation?
Yes,
I
yeah.
thought it was, because we did have some other questions that
Okay.
were, like at the end, I will. So,
Yeah.
Representative Benton, we've got you on 5.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question about if you have a client that is that leaves a provider and they're receiving state grant and aid dollars. If the vacant slot is not filled by another individual for that provider, what happens to those dollars?
So, the way DBHDD thinks about it sometimes is a little different than the way a provider might talk about it. So when I hear about a slot, I understand how a provider might talk about a slot as if they've been allocated a slot. But really, the individuals have choice, and we fund the individuals to receive services. So the way we think about it is the individual, the funding is for the individual to receive their identified needs through the treatment plan.
Okay.
We don't think of it as the slot stays with the provider just because the individual once chose that provider.
Okay, so if somebody leaves, then those dollars leave, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Would there be any chance of, instead of those dollars leaving, could you use those to help with these waiver slots?
So right now, we think of state funds as dollars that allow us to have a little bit of flexibility outside the constraints of what's very specifically in the waiver.
Okay.
There are many families in Georgia who might not be eligible for the guidelines as they exist in the waiver, but they have needs that the state would like to be able to match. Those state funds really represent our only ability to do that. So, but it is our hope over the course of time, and in fact we have really a 5-year plan over the course of time with how we might talk about how to build the system in the way that we all would like it, retain some flexibility, always making sure people in need can get what they need, and then moving to maximum use of federal dollars. But I know some folks have been interested in sort of making that switch immediately. We have some concerns about individuals with needs that can't be met in the very strict confines of the waiver program, and wanting to make sure that those folks don't have nothing available immediately. But we do have a plan for how we might do a transition around those state funds over the course of the next several years.
Okay. One final question, Madam Chair.
Yes.
On your waiver list, how many people are on that list right now?
The planning list?
Mm-hmm.
A little over 8,000.
8,000.
Yes.
And if I was on that list and I was number 1 on the list, could someone supplant me because their need is greater than mine?
So the DD planning list, with a large number of individuals on it, is organized by need and urgency of need. So an urgency of need.
I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I'm just okay.
Yes. Yeah. So urgency of need and is what drives movement from the list.
But you've got 8,000 people on that list.
Yes.
What do you figure it would cost to get everybody off that list?
I'm sorry, can you say the question again?
What kind of dollars are we talking about to take them all off?
So you all really...
I understand that that's an impossibility, and if it's an impossibility, why do we have a list that has 8,000 people on it?
I think it's a great question. So you all asked us to prepare a plan for the General Assembly, and we have put that plan forward about what would it look like if Georgia made a long-term commitment to really reduce or almost eliminate that waiting list over the course of time. So, and we put together a 5-year plan of how we could thoughtfully maybe make a significant improvement on reduction of that list year by year, and what level of fiscal commitment that would take from the department. We stand ready, and what would it take from the provider community to match that need? We believe, and we would like to have a further conversation with you all about what that would look like over a multi-year investment.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for the opportunity. We'd love to have more conversation about it. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the committee? Not seeing any. I would like to ask you something. I am constantly asked, I was today, again, about the plan for those individuals with developmental disabilities in our state hospital. And as we come to the end of this settlement, if you could just update us a little bit on that process.
Yeah, thanks so much, Madam Chair. So I think you all are familiar. State of Georgia signed an agreement with the Department of Justice We signed an extension of that agreement, and as you note, Madam Chair, the end date for that is June 30th of 2018. As of today, there are 189 individuals remaining in our state hospital with a diagnosis of intellectual and developmental disability. Very important to note a commitment that the state of Georgia made at the beginning of this settlement agreement, and I really believe this is evidence of our strong goodwill. We closed the front door, and so since the time of the signing of the agreement in 2010, individuals with IDD, intellectual and developmental disabilities, can no longer come into the hospitals. So I reported in my initial presentation, we all, as a state, have invested $235 million to, over the past 7 years to achieve the gains that we've made through the settlement agreement. That's divided between behavioral health and developmental disabilities pretty evenly. A good portion of that money for individuals with developmental disabilities is moved to transition individuals with very complex needs who may be fragile and move them into group homes in the community. And the call for us in the agreement right now is to do that at a reasonable pace. We believe we are on track, moving individuals at a reasonable pace, and that June 30th deadline, our agreement says clearly at the end of the agreement, individuals have to be in the setting that's most appropriate to their needs. Every individual that wants to move is on a list, and we are doing active planning and preparation for. There are other individuals for whom we're still building the possibility of a life in the community, but we are very optimistic that our efforts to move at a reasonable pace, provide homes and a life in the community, even for the most fragile individuals, that we will continue to move forward with that.
And when you say most fragile, just to be clear on that, that's also other compounding medical issues that make it difficult to move.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, and we've spoken about this before, so DBHDD is proud of the work that our team and our provider network has done, but one of the challenges that we had early on when we were moving at a more rapid pace was very fragile and complex individuals were moving into community-based settings, into provider homes. Even where we had a skilled provider, if that individual became ill and went into the hospital, many local hospitals did not have the medical personnel to treat those individuals. They were quite surprised in some cases to see individuals living in the community with that level of disability. And so we really had some challenges about meeting their medical needs in the community. You might have their residential needs met in a home setting, but their medical and nursing needs, we might have challenges to meet. Since that time, the money you all have invested with DBHDD, we have established an Office of Health and Wellness, which is led by nurses with experience with this population. So throughout the state, we've increased the development of guidelines, practices, and our coordination with the community. And we revised our transition process to do a lot more preparation for individuals who have lived in an institution for 20, 30, 40, 50 years to have an adequate life in the community. We're far more prepared, and we have providers that can do that work. But we will move at a pace that makes it possible for each individual, and can't move any faster than that. I think that's reasonable.
Well, thank you for that work. I know it's been very challenging, and it's good to get close to the other side of it, I think, so that you can begin to address the beginning of the challenges of developmental disabilities as well as mental health, and you've done such an excellent job of that working on the commission, and I think everyone in this room is probably just anxiously awaiting to hear the next presentation for 19, especially from this department. So thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Members of the committee, we really appreciate your support. Thank you.
All right, and so last but certainly not least, the Georgia Department of Human Services. I believe we have Commissioner Crittenden and Interim Director Virginia Pryor both presenting on this, and been waiting to hear from y'all because of the weather that kept you from presenting the last time. So I know that this subcommittee particularly is anxious to hear what you bring to us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and committee members. Thank you for asking us to come before you to discuss the Governor's amended budget proposal for fiscal year 2018 for the Department of Human Services. My name is Robin Crittenden. I have with me today members of my leadership team, including Chief of Staff and Chief Financial Officer Gerald Hines, and Demetrius Taylor, who is the Deputy Chief Financial Officer. Additionally, Ginger Pryor, Interim Director of our Division of Family and Children's Services, is here today with her leadership team to present the details of the Governor's proposal as it relates to DFACS. Our vision in the Department of Human Services is to build stronger families for a stronger Georgia. With each policy, program, and service that we provide, we ask ourselves, does this help build stronger families and, as a result, a stronger Georgia? We continue to prioritize efficiency, safety for vulnerable Georgians, and outreach across all of our programs. With that in mind, here's how we will use our resources to accomplish our goals, adhere to the law governing our programs, and hold ourselves accountable to the public trust. DHS has about $1.6 billion allocated to protect and serve Georgia's vulnerable populations. Accounting for DHS and its attached entities, the total fiscal year 2018 budget allocation is $1.8 billion. Overall, Governor Deal is requesting an amended fiscal year 18 budget of about $772.3 million in state funds. The Governor is not requesting additional funds for DHS in the amended FY18 budget, except specifically for DFACS. Thank you for allowing me to present. Now I'd like to turn it over to Interim Director Pryor to present on the budget for DFACS. We will be happy to take questions at the end.
Thank you, Commissioner Crittenden. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chairwoman Dempsey and Vice Chair, Chairman Kirby, and members of the committee. You have to excuse me, this is my first time presenting to the committee, but I am honored to really be here today as the Interim Director for the Division of Family and Children's Services. As many of you know, my colleague, Bobby Cagle, now leads the nation's largest child welfare jurisdiction in LA County in California. Before I get started to address FY18, the amended budget, I just really wanted to quickly tell you about a few of the accomplishments of the division, all of which you all have supported, and it wouldn't have been possible without your support, and that's the Blueprint for Change, and that is the reform effort, which was really Senate Bill 138. Since that time, we've had over 700 positions that have been added to the division's budget, and a support of a market-based salary increases for our frontline workers. And since 2014, we have seen our employee turnover drop from 38% to just below 30%. We have seen our caseloads fall from on average of 38 per worker to 19 per worker on average. We have expanded support for relative caregivers, foster parents with kinship navigators, and a newly created team of foster parent support. We, of course, continue to address the challenges serving vulnerable families, especially with the aggravating issues around the opioid crisis, which is adding to the children that we place in care while parents are trying to recover. And this is really impacting our budget, of which you'll see in a moment. And also what I forgot to do was introduce the fact that I actually have my team here with me, and that is my Chief of Staff, Jeff Lukage, my Chief Financial Officer, Cliff O'Connor, and my Legislative Director, Walter Jones. So really quickly now, I'd like to turn to the budget amendment for the current fiscal year, and its first two items that you see on the slide are really to involve swapping, if you will, of $2.1 million in federal TANF funds for the same amount in state funds for child welfare services. This will give us the needed flexibility to use those funds to support our increase in adoptions casework with no net increase from either source. The second is the governor has added, proposing to add $15 million to the division's budget to cover spending for out-of-home care. These funds are as a result of the growth in the foster care population, which is due in large part, as I mentioned earlier, to the opioid epidemic. Today, we have about 13,500 children in foster care, which is about a 17% increase since fall of 2015, when the population at that time was about 11,600 children in care. So with that, that ends my presentation, and now the Commissioner Critton and I would be more than happy to answer any questions that you have.
Representative Benton.
Commissioner, two questions for you, please. The Aging and Disability Resource Centers, over the last couple of years, they've lost about 10% of their funding. What are your plans to help alleviate that? I don't know that that's y'all's fault. I think that's in that federal funding. Are we going to be able to make any of that up, or is that just lost money?
Well, at this point, that is not reflected in the amended budget, nor is it reflected in the budget for FY19. And so we're looking at ways to try to assist with that, but it may result in a decrease in services.
A decrease in service? Okay. One other question I had deals with legislation that was passed last year, House Bill 486. That was a proxy caregivers bill. It was scheduled to be implemented January 1st. Could you tell me why that's not implemented yet?
That's which bill, please?
I'm sorry?
Could you repeat which bill it is?
Could you tell me why that legislation has not been implemented yet?
I'm sorry, you said House Bill 486. Which
486,
bill?
proxy caregiver.
The proxy for the caregiver?
Uh-huh.
I'll have to check on that for you, please.
Okay.
I'll get back to you.
Are there any other questions from the committee? Representative Howard.
Excuse me. Thank you for your work. Thank you, Madam Chair. The Augusta office was damaged by fire recently. How is that project to get those staff workers back over into the main office? How's that coming?
Would you give an update on that? We did work with the college up there, but now we're in the next phase of it, so if you'd give an update.
Yes, there was a fire there. The staff have been relocated temporarily to what was an abandoned school, and the State Properties Commission is working with the city to renovate the building that we were in before, and so we expect to be able to move back into the old facility, hopefully upgraded with all the fire damage repaired, and the building brought a little bit more up to standard. There's still some discussion about exactly how much of the building we're going to occupy, but the feedback I've gotten is that people were expecting it to be done by the summer.
Thank you. Representative Oliver.
Forgive me if I've missed this in your presentation or the time of the committee I missed, but I'm looking at 28.1.3 and 28.6.4. It seems to look like you're using TANF money to fill some holes on adoption services and child welfare services, but I'm not sure I understand. I understand the greater growth of out-of-placement care is causing a big budget issue, but I'm not sure why it's in adoption services. Can you explain that to me?
Surely, Representative. So I just want to make sure, are you referring to the actual swap that I mentioned?
Is it a swap, or is it using additional 2.1 TANF money that has not been spent anywhere else?
It's an actual swap of the funds, and Cliff can correct me if I'm wrong, but the reason we are making that switch is because of the increase in the adoption services. Those funds cannot be covered by TANF because of the expansion of that work, and so we have to switch the funds out and put the TANF funds back and put child welfare services in place of that, because the TANF funds cannot be used for specific adoption services. So that's why it's net neutral. It's not an increase of funds. It's funds that we already have. We're just switching the two budget lines.
If I can, just a couple more details on that. In the adoptions program budget, it's a mix of state, 4E, and TANF money.
Right.
The TANF money has always been the third funding source in there, and it's been used for something specific. And this goes back over 15 years. It's only used for non-4E eligible two-parent families, because the TANF law emphasizes two-parent families. What we have found, no good deed goes unpunished. We've been able to increase the 4E penetration rate in the adoption services program. At the same time, the number of kids that have been adopted have gone up. So we're doing very well on the 4E side. I can only use the TANF money in the adoptions program when they're non-4E eligible. So because we've had $16.4 million budgeted in the adoption program budget, when we did the first quarter analysis, we saw that we were not able to draw all of our TANF money because it's based on a computer cross-match based upon the factors I just gave you, and yet we would have run a state funds deficit. Although the overall budget was adequate in the adoptions program budget, the mix was incorrect. So what we're proposing in the budget is to pull about $2.1 million in state money from the Child Welfare Services program budget over to adoptions, and then return $2.1 million in TANF money from the adoptions-based budget to the Child Welfare program budget, because I have more costs in the Child Welfare program budget that I can charge either way. But the adoptions program budget, it's a very discrete pocket of costs that are TANF eligible, and it's gone down as we've succeeded in increasing the 4E penetration rate.
Thank you, that's helpful. I am always interested in the 4E penetration. Well, we've talked about that historically.
Right.
And historically, there's also been some little bit of conflict, a little bit of different interpretation about use of TANF money, using TANF as a bank, and that's kind of what gives the impression here. But thank you, that explanation is very helpful.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, if I may, Representative Benton, I apologize. That's actually not our bill, but I will find out exactly whose it is and get that information to you. Thank you.
I think that, to further clarify just a little bit too, I think it falls under the jurisdiction of DCH and DBHDD. So yes. We need some information on that from them. It's okay. What matters is that you're concerned about it. So thank you. Are there any other questions from the committee? Well, if not, let me ask just a little bit here. Commissioner Crittenden, I wonder if you might give us a little update on how the Georgia Gateway program is going.
Certainly. As you may know, Georgia Gateway was a collaborative project of the Department of Human Services, the Department of Community Health, Department of Public Health, DECAL, as well as working with GTA. And we all worked together to create an eligibility system that would work to determine eligibility for all the different programs, several of the different programs that we all do. The system was implemented in several phases, the last phase going live in September. And so it has been extremely successful. We're very pleased. In comparison, there is no comparison between the work that we've done and the work that other states have done. Our system is larger, it's more comprehensive, and it is working. So it has been a huge task for the staffs from all those agencies, as well as GTA has assisted throughout the process. At this point, we have had over 8 million customer portal logins on the system, and over 1.2 active customer cases are in the system. And so we continue to see, one of the things that we did in the system that was different from other states was that we called it just-in-time training for our staff. So they got trained just before we went live, and that was very effective because it meant that they weren't trained early and forgot how to use the system. And so we are seeing our staffs getting more and more up to speed in using it. The systems the areas that went on earlier are processing very quickly, and we're seeing the others improving and getting faster each time. So we're seeing more and more what we call team adoption of the system. So we are very pleased with how it's been going. Thank you.
Great. And when you spoke about entitlements too, I wanted to ask you, so with the changes that have come forward about able-bodied without dependents only getting 3 months every 3 years, I just wonder if we are seeing any decreases yet. I know it's early, but are we seeing any changes or savings to state cost with administering or in the overall drop in the SNAP population?
Do that. Do you want to comment on that?
Thank you, Chairwoman. I'll have to actually get back to you
That's fine.
on that information, but I'll make sure we get it as quickly as
Well,
possible.
I know it's early, but I know we're all interested in kind of keeping an eye on that. So we might create a way to kind of get some updates every now and then.
Absolutely.
Or something. And I want, while you're there, though, Director Pryor, I want to ask you to give a little update to the committee too. You spoke of the Blueprint for Change, and I know you've been actively engaged in working on the State of Hope project. I want to give you a minute just to kind of tell a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Some of you may or may not know, my career before here, I was with a foundation called Casey Family Programs. And during that time, something was launched at the foundation called a Community of Hope. And the notion of Community of Hope is the collective impact of all of us to improve outcomes for children and families. And it really is prevention. So when we talk about the numbers of children coming into the child welfare system and how do we mitigate that, we need to be intentional as a child welfare jurisdiction about focusing on prevention. We were not built to focus on prevention. We are a reactionary system, so we react or we respond after the fact. And so we went about the business at the foundation of helping to support child welfare jurisdictions to raise up what we call communities of hope. And that is about going into communities and asking them and doing assessments around what are the things that they need to function at a higher level. One of those representations is actually here right now in Georgia, and it's in Northwest Georgia, and it's in Chairwoman Dempsey's jurisdiction in Rome, and that's called Restoration Rome. Restoration Rome really is a one-stop shop, for lack of a better way of being able to say that, where an abandoned school for $1 was purchased, and they were able to gut that school and put a variety of services that support many of the families that sit in Section 8 housing that are right next to this school. The highest number of calls to our child welfare system in that region come from that Section 8 housing. And so what we realized in talking to the residents there, that they needed support around food insecurity, they needed clothing closets, they needed access to CASA, they needed other community resources, whether it was about keeping their lights on, parenting classes. And so instead of sending our families to multiple places across the state, they have one place where they can go and get all of the needed supports that they need to restore their families and to move forward. So Director Cagle and I made a collective decision that we didn't want to have just one region of hope. We wanted to have 14 of those. So we moved to raise up what we call a state of hope. And again, that is about the public and private collective impact to improve outcomes for children and families. Representative Dempsey, or Chairwoman Dempsey, actually serves on our design team. We have been about the business of putting together our value proposition in terms of what does that mean to play a role in the division, to partner with our providers, to partner with others in the community to make sure that we have preventative measures to mitigate children from coming into care, and to also think about when we bring children into care, when we return them home, how do we ensure that they don't return to the system? And State of Hope will be about the business of doing that. You see many of the partners actually from Together Georgia and others that sit back there as well to help us raise up State of Hope. We will be raising up 3 actual regions of hope this year. We're going through an application process, then we'll do a deep dive into communities to do focus groups, and then go about the business of designing what interventions and preventions need to happen in those respective communities. And so please stay tuned. We're very excited about the partnerships that we have. DHS is a partner with us as well. We will be moving into taking a look at aging and the other areas within the department, because when we talk about prevention, it's not just about the children that come into the system. It is about our elderly and the services and support that they need, whether it be Meals on Wheels. It is about, again, our collective impact. So I'm very excited about the potential for us to be able to mitigate children from coming into the system. And again, if they come into the system, make sure that they don't return when we send them home, because we send them to strong communities. And as the commissioner says in the vision, it is about safe children, strengthen families, and really a stronger Georgia.
Thank you so much. You know, the Restoration Rome Project, I'm going to tell you just a little bit about it. It came from individuals who actually saw the need and were very frustrated with the numbers of children going into state care. And they figured out a way to do it. So it was not that the state told them how to do it as much as they rolled up their sleeves and went to work. And I think that is what is so important to hear right now, is that the levels of frustration are high. Georgia's foster care population continues to increase. The challenges of our elderly population continue to increase, but it is going to be how we empower our local communities, I think, to partner with us all across the state and find ways to think out of the box, to do this a little differently, and really to change the dynamics for each and every one of those families. I thank y'all for your presentation today and look forward to working with you. We are going to now move into the time of public comment. Let's see if we can get the list over here and see what we can do. Is there anyone here that wanted to sign up to speak that did not get on the list? Have we got it covered? Okay, great. Well, we will start with our very first, and that is Melanie McNeil. And I'll tell you so that the next person can be starting to get ready. That will be Carl Lehman with Childkind.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I really was here to talk about state fiscal year 19, but it occurred to me that our budget requests that we have put forward over the last couple of years have in them a way to, we're asking for $550,000, but we have a couple of different options, and so one of them might be to add some funding in the amended budget to cover a need that we have. The State Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program, we're advocates for people who live in nursing homes, assisted living communities, and personal care homes. We really have a need for an ombudsman representative in Gwinnett County. That's our East program. So if we could get that into the amended budget, we could go ahead and get someone hired. We also need some additional folks for the metro area. And so what I have is our request that I'll give to you for state fiscal year 19, but it has several options. And so if you wouldn't mind to take a look at that, and if you could put some funding into the amended budget, I think we could spend it, and we really need it for Gwinnett County. So that's really, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Otherwise, I'll just leave this handout with you.
Are there any questions from the committee? I don't see any. Thank you.
Thank you.
19. Okay, that's Carl. Okay, so next is Sally Buchanan. I'm here to do Sally's presentation, but we'll wait. Wait until 9. Okay, great. What about Juanita Stedman? Together, Georgia?
Madam Chair, I'm with those folks, and we're
Great.
going to eagerly wait till the next time. So
Great. Shelley Simmons? Okay. Maureen Kelly. Well, we appreciate y'all being here and listening in and preparing. I'm sorry that that message went out if that, concerns your day in any way that you were here for 19 and we actually dealt with the 18 amended. But I thank y'all. I know much of the good work that each of you do, so persevere. And before you know it, we will be back here for those 19 hearings. Are there any other comments from the committee? Not seeing anybody light up here, I will call this meeting to a close. We are now adjourned. Thank you.